As far as I'm concerned, this is one of the most important ones you've ever done, and not because I'm involved.
So, you ready to go?
I'm ready when you are.
Welcome to the James River Exchange. I am Nancy Gill, your host, and today I'm here with Eddie Payne, and he is a man with a plan. Greetings, Eddie.
Hello, Nancy. Glad to have you over.
So, last time I was here, we were chit-chatting about town council.
Well, I served for 7 years. I wasn't elected last November, but I had some unfinished business, and the topic for today is one of the projects I wish I had been able to approach when I was on council. Having the title of town council of Scottsville really gave me the opportunity to knock on a lot of doors. And now, with this project, sometimes you have to kick them down.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you for having me today.
You know, I also think this is a very important project, and we are going to be discussing pharmacies in Scottsville, particularly how we can strategize to get one back. And Eddie has done a plethora of research, and we're going to hear all about it. And first up, I think perhaps a brief history of pharmacies here in town.
Okay. Well, Scottsville has a 200-year history of what I would term as a health hub for Southern Albemarle, the town of Scottsville, Western Fluvanna, Northern Buckingham especially. So not only in the early times was it a economic hub and a transportation hub, it was also a healthcare hub. Started out with apothecary shops. They had herbal remedies, natural remedies. We didn't have manufactured drugs back then. We have a historical record as early as 1809, but I suspect there was an apothecary shop here earlier. Moving fast forward, after the Civil War, and a lot of inroads were made just because of that conflict, medicine improved. We actually had manufactured drugs after that. So the first mention of a drug store in Scottsville was around 1876, I'm sorry. And I'm not sure who operated it or how long. In the early 1900s, two doctors, one of them being Dr. Stinson, ran a drugstore in Scottsville in the old apothecary building, and they called it the Scottsville Drug Company. One thing was lacking was a pharmacist. So they advertised in the newspapers down in Richmond, and Mr. Bruce and his family answered the call, came to Scottsville. He became a partner, Mr. Bruce did, with the two physicians, and originally it was the three of them. He ended up with the business around 1909, I think. And that Bruce's drugstore lasted for almost 100 years. Fast forward to the Scottsville Pharmacy. After Bruce's drugstore changed hands and went out of business, Scottsville Pharmacy showed up. And I think they really was exactly what the community needed. It was friendly. The service was the greatest thing. They knew your name, and they probably knew your family. And that's what a neighborhood pharmacy is. They went out of business, and Rite Aid showed up. And Rite Aid lasted about 2 years, I think. And I have to tell you, Nancy, I was disappointed when Rite Aid opened their doors. I knew it wasn't going to be a full-service pharmacy like you see in other communities, larger communities. But I did not expect what was there. It was a pharmacy with over 75% of the property really dedicated to pharmaceutical preparation, dispensing, sales. All the Band-Aids and cough syrups were just window dressing. So anyway, Rite Aid was there. They closed their doors last May, and here we are now in what I and other people refer to as a pharmaceutical desert, which defined means a community with no pharmacy and at least 10 miles away from the closest one.
So it's a little more than 10 miles, I believe.
Well, you have a pharmacy in, of course, Charlottesville, 20 miles. You have one in Palmyra, around the lake. You have, if you want to go to Louisa, you can go to Walmart, Fork Union, and Dillon. But they're all pretty far away.
So one comment I want to make about the difference between Scottsville Pharmacy and Rite Aid. The whole neighborhood spirit just disappeared with Rite Aid. And you walked in and it was, I mean, I don't know if sterile is the word I really want to use to describe it, but had no personality. Where you would go into Scottsville Pharmacy, they gave you options to buy more stuff while they were filling your prescription.
And it wasn't just across-the-counter drugs or Band-Aids. It was like a gift shop.
Yes.
I feel the same way. You know, with Rite Aid, they were part of a corporation, nameless, faceless. They weren't vested in the community, where someone like Scottsville Pharmacy, with your pharmacists living nearby and the employees, they were vested in the community. A drugstore is more than a drugstore. It's an important healthcare provider, just as important as a doctor. And it's just so important because they can offer services like testing, vaccines, more personalized health information than the corporate Rite Aids can. And, you know, it saves a lot of trips to the emergency room or your doctor when you can get a vaccine or a test or advice here. Rite Aid was in financial trouble when the doors opened here in Scottsville. They were going through a bankruptcy. They had to change their business plan, if you will, and restructure to fight that bankruptcy. So this Rite Aid here was their idea of a pilot program. Undoubtedly, it didn't work. And what happened with Rite Aid, there are a number of reasons why Rite Aid closed, but the main reason was they were improperly, illegally, and without regard to the customer or the patient, dispensing drugs and medications. And most of those were opioids, which we know are addictives. So having done that, having them go across the counter with the opioids when they shouldn't have, and they ended up in the wrong hands, people developed health problems. Also, a lot of people died. Here came the lawsuits. They were inundated with lawsuits from all over the country, to the tune of, at my last count, $3.3 billion with a B. $3.3 billion they were facing. They couldn't handle it. They were selling off assets. They tried everything. Nothing worked. So not only did they shut down the pharmacy here in Scottsville and the Commonwealth of Virginia, they shut everyone down. I don't think they're anymore in existence.
I think you're right. So when you say they were selling a lot of opioids, you mean throughout their national network?
Yes. But, you know, they had their hot spots. Um, I, I can't remember, you know, where the most abuse took place. But no, I don't think it was, you know, one or two. It was a bunch of them.
Yeah.
I mean, and $3.3 billion, they just could not handle it. They went bankrupt again for the second time. So this pharmacy here, Rite Aid's, was doomed from the start. Excuse me, the small pharmacies um, had a lot of hoops to jump through, if you will. But in 2025, we lost 32 more, and probably more this year already in 2 months. So we keep losing pharmacies. And so I think the smaller pharmacies had something in common with Scottsville Pharmacy. I don't know what their expenses were. I don't know who their management was, but they all had to pay a lot of money to get their drugs, put them on the shelf, and get them across the counter. The main reason for this is something called a pharmaceutical benefit manager. Now, your corporations, like this, for example, CVS. CVS owns their own pharmaceutical manager and an insurance company. So these pharmaceutical benefit managers are they're the middlemen, the gatekeepers. They negotiate with the big pharmaceutical companies, and they end up negotiating with the insurance companies. The prices that are set through all these negotiations are the prices that a Scottsville pharmacy has to pay, and they're usually higher prices. And there's a reason for that. The pharmaceutical benefit managers, the PBMs, make money. They take their cut, and so does the insurance company. These were supposed to be passed on to the pharmacies in a lot of cases. It was costing Scottsville Pharmacy more on some of their prescriptions to get them to you across the counter than they could sell them for. I've heard stories of, for example, by the time they get it, keep it, pay the employees, the pharmacists to dispense it, a $10 prescription they could only sell for $1. You can't maintain, I mean, hundreds of times that happens. You can't maintain a business at a loss like that. So that's the main reason I think these pharmacies are going out of business. They're paying high prices. They're not making a profit.
So when we use our prescription cards, and depending on what plan you have is what you pay. Does the pharmacy get reimbursed by the insurance companies?
They get reimbursed by the pharmaceutical business managers.
Okay.
They'll pay, they will, in the form of a discount. So the benefits managers will pass the discounts, what's left of them, on to the smaller pharmacies. The insurance company gets their part of it. And of course, you've got to pay the drug company. And the drug companies have taken a lot of heat, but they make less than 50% of the profits from their own drugs.
So you've mention federal and state things throughout this, and I know you've been doing a lot of research on legislation that's coming out of the Virginia General Assembly. How could that possibly benefit Scottsville?
Okay, let me address the Virginia General Assembly in a minute.
Okay.
Let's look at our local government first here in Scottsville. The three councils I served on, I say three because people come and go, during the period that Scottsville Pharmacy shut down and Rite Aid, we knew that there was a problem. I say we because I was on council. We didn't have an answer. The pharmaceutical fairy wasn't going to land on Victory Hall, wave their wand, and open up a store.
Yeah.
But we discussed it, and we didn't know how to approach it. The mayor, just the other day, made a remark to me that he had made a few phone calls, and this wasn't getting anywhere. I found out in the last month it takes more than a few phone calls. So as far as our local government goes, and they're not in the business of recruiting. They would use their resources, of course, to help any business, especially a pharmacy coming to Scottsville. They would do anything you ask that a town does, but it just didn't happen. And it doesn't seem like there's been much discussion with this council either. So that's your local government. So let's skip the state again. Let's go to the federal government because this is pretty exciting. Excuse my cough, folks. We know that a lot of pharmaceuticals are manufactured in China. And President Trump, with his tariffs, only add costs to the goods that come in. He is trying to get research and development and manufacturing by these pharmaceutical companies back in the country. And he's being successful doing it. That's a way to save money, the American consumer, the Scottsville community. Secondly, just last Thursday, he launched a Trump, this is a website, trumprx.gov. The administration has negotiated with the big pharmacy companies, 7 at my last count, 11 ready to get on board. He's negotiating for lower prices. And he's been successful. So all the pharmaceuticals that have been negotiated, a community like Scottsville should see the benefits of that. Right now on his website, there are 43 different pharmaceuticals. Some of them are there because they're popular. Now, if you go on this website, you may not see yours, but they say, the administration says that they're going to be adding them weekly. You're going to see a lot of drug choices on there at a reduced price. So Scottsville consumer saves money. And when it comes, to their website, they've got a really great frequently asked questions that will answer all of your questions. Now this new negotiations with the drug prices, with the pharmacies, Medicare is going to have to pay less for their drugs. Medicaid will pay less for their drugs. The consumer saves. Your insurance companies, pharmaceutical or prescription drug plans are going to have to pay less. Maybe that'll lower your premiums. We hope so. And even if you're cash and carry across the board, this website if you find your prescription on there, you can print out a coupon that must be honored by any pharmacy. So that's how people that have no plans, no benefits, can save money. A lot of thought went into that too. But here's, here's the most exciting news. Just today, President Trump signed into law a pharmaceutical benefits management reform program that's been about 8 years in the making. So not all the credit goes to the Trump administration. It also goes to prior administrations that go back 8 years. They finally got it done. And what this does, basically in a nutshell, is they're going to tell these pharmaceutical managers how to run their businesses. They're not going to get the big cuts they were. It's a regulation, and but still, it's a needed regulation. By doing that, the consumer saves money. So that just, let's see, that happened, he signed it into law 1 hour ago. That's how recent it is. So I'm really, really feeling good about that. So finally, Nancy, we're going to get to the state.
Okay. What's Virginia doing?
Well, on the Senate side, they saw a little bit about what we've been talking about with the pharmaceutical business managers. So Virginia has got their version of a reform where they're going to, they were going to deal with the PBMs. Maybe this federal legislation will go over and above that, or this may, add to the regulations. I don't know. But there's that one Senate bill. In fact, there's another Senate bill that goes a bit farther, that actually the state of Virginia becomes their own pharmaceutical business manager. So you don't have to deal with the middleman. The big pharma, if you will, has to deal with the state of Virginia. Now, I don't say that governments do everything right all the time or do a good job at it all the time, but at least they see the need for some type of reform. And finally, and this is big, folks, House Bill 335. Remember that number, House Bill HB 335. Let me look at my notes here, if I can read it. I want to tell you what this bill is called. Alrighty. It's called the Independent Pharmacy Access and Resilience Pilot Program. HB 335 is a whole lot easier to remember. What this bill does, the Virginia legislature has seen the pharmacies leave. Pharmacy deserts, like Scottsville. There are 22 recognized when I first started my research. That now there are 30 in just a few weeks' time. 30 more pharmacies are gone.
So 30 pharmacies have closed in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
In the year 2025 and 2026 so far.
And this House bill that you just referenced, what is that about?
House Bill 335 will establish 12 pharmacies in needy communities. So the legislature and probably the Virginia Department of Health will pick out 12 localities, and right now the funding is at $600,000. 12 divided into $600,000 is $50,000 per locality, but not locality actually, it's per pharmacy or pharmacist. So that will be financial assistance as well as other resources that the state provides that will allow startup pharmacies in these pharmacy deserts. There are other agencies in the state that can provide their resources. The different business communities can provide help with startup. Your colleges and universities, VCU, Appalachian College, they have got placement programs for their students. There's so many resources out there that can be used to bring a pharmacy into Scottsville. This is going to just fly through the legislature in Richmond. And I suspect by the end of the month, it'll be on the governor's desk for a signature. If passed, it would go into effect July the 1st. And if chosen, it's conceivable that Scottsville may have a pharmacy in early 2027.
If the community pulls together and supports your efforts in contacting the legislators. So I'm going to walk away right now and let you talk to the camera.
Well, Nancy's trying to ask, what can the community do? And this, listeners and viewers, is the most important thing I can say about getting a drugstore back in Scottsville. We're lucky, again, to have two legislators, two voices in Richmond, Amy Loeffler and Tom Garrett, our representatives in the House. Ms. Loeffler is actually on the Appropriations Committee that controls the funding. So where other localities may just have one rep, the Scottsville community has two. I can't say this enough. You have got to call these legislatures and tell them that we need a pharmacy in Scottsville and that Scottsville should be considered and chosen for the new pilot program. Scottsville checks all the boxes. We are a pharmacy desert 10 miles away, and we have no pharmacy. Again, I can't say it enough. You've got to make this call. And I was talking with Nancy earlier. We have so many communities that say that nothing's being done. Well, that stops today because somebody is doing something. And I want it to be the community too. So you've got to make these calls. In the time it takes for you to sit down at a computer and complain about not having a drugstore, you can spend that same 2 minutes and call these legislators and tell them that we need a drugstore in Scottsville. Please, please, make the call.
Is that a wrap, Eddie? Thank you so much for this. And I know I'm not sitting over there with you, but everyone, we'll have all the contact information in the written part of the podcast. And as always, if you have a song, a story, an event, or an issue, such as this one, perhaps it's time for a conversation. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Nancy.